Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Thursday, September 2nd, 2010, and this is Day 9 Daily number 171. The Day 9 Daily where we learn to be a better gamer. And we learn that dirty glasses are very difficult to see through. And I actually was just mentioning this to the live audience. This is for you on-demand folks, that I'm always very concerned about the crookedness of my glasses because I rewatched one of my streams and saw how crooked they were, and I couldn't focus. I mean, seriously, like, they looked like this in the past dailies, and that is just problematic. I just should probably invest in some new glasses, but I don't, because I just sit at home playing video games and eating meat. Ah, meat. So today, I wanted to, instead of just doing like Day 9 story time beforehand, I wanted everything to apply to learning. I have this great example, because there's this riddle I absolutely love. Now, I'm going to ask you this riddle, and then I'm going to pause, so that way you get a chance to think about it and to answer it. And in that pause, I have strategically run out of clean glasses. So I have to have this little tiny baby shot glass for my water. So I'm going to drink most of it right now. Thank God I have a riddle plan, because I really need water to do these without having my throat explode. So, here's the riddle. Here is the riddle. Here is the riddle coming up. And one thing, let me just say that I hate about riddles. Let me just straighten my damn friggin' glasses. One thing I hate about riddles is bullshit riddles. I hate bullshit riddles. I hate them. Let me give an example of a bullshit riddle. So, Molly lives on the 12th floor of her apartment. Every day, Molly gets in the elevator, goes to the first floor, and proceeds to work. And on the return home, she only goes up to the 6th floor and walks the rest of the way up. Why? And what pisses me off about this riddle is that here's the answer. The answer is that Molly is a little girl who's 6 years old who can't reach the number 12 button, so she can only reach the number 6 button. And the reason that's bullshit is because the riddle is, hey, here's a bunch of information, but I am withholding key information. So just get lucky. There is no reason the answer couldn't be Molly hates the numbers 7 through 12 and refuses to push them. Or that Molly's allergic to 12, or that Molly is actually goop and can only just ooze down the 6th button, or that the 6th button is by the foot. Like, it could have been any of those. Those technically are equally legitimate to Molly's a little girl and can't reach high enough. And that's what really annoys me about a lot of those styles of riddles. But what's interesting is that those are very prevalent. Those are all over the place. You'll hear hundreds and hundreds of those. But here's one of my favorite ones, and this definitely relates to Starcraft and how you should think and how you should approach a lot of problems in life. Here's the riddle. Here it goes. I have 2 pieces of string. Oh, by the way, okay, I'm going to say this right now. Don't look at the chat, because I know some of you know the answer to this and probably already typed it in the chat. Don't look at it if you've never heard this riddle before, because this is important. This is a useful exercise. So. You have 2 pieces of string. Each string burns from left to right in exactly 1 hour. Or I should say burns from end to end in exactly 1 hour. Using these 2 pieces of string, measure 45 minutes. I'm going to let you think about that while I get water. Oh, AFK during a daily. Ladies and gentlemen, this is professional web streaming service where I'm not here. Just think about that. How do you measure 45 minutes using these 2 pieces of string, each of which burn from end to end in 1 hour? See you. I'm gonna lock it, so that way all the paparazzi can't get in here and invade the Day 9 web stream while it's live. Okay, so I'm sure you've had some time to think about this. And what's my favorite part about this riddle is the thought process people go through initially. Now, before I do that, I'm going to tell you the answer. It's very elegant. So, Actually, screw that. I'm going to go through the thought process first. Yeah, take that. So here's the thought process a lot of people go through. Is first they say things like, well, okay, so I'm going to cut the first string in half, and then I'm going to burn the one half, and that'll be 30 minutes. And you immediately stop them and you say, why are you assuming that the string burns evenly? It might burn a little bit for 55 minutes, and the last 5 minutes zhoop, just burns right through the rest. I didn't say anything about the evenness of how it burned. And they say, okay, well, can I tie the strings together? Okay, yeah, sure. And then, well, so I'm going to, and they keep trying to divide, and they're like, what if I break it into thirds, and all this stuff? And at the core, you're starting to realize that they are trying to find the hidden bit of information, right? Similar to Molly, who can't press the number 12 because I just didn't tell you she couldn't. In this riddle, people will say things like, well, okay, is there like a knot in one of the strings? Is there any labeling on the strings? Do I have anything? Is there a ruler in the room? Like, what's this room? You just have these two pieces of string. Or the assumption about the people make assumptions that they shouldn't. They make these extra assumptions. I have no idea why. Like that the string can be cut in half, or that you know how to measure one half of a string in this, or that it burns evenly. These huge assumptions that they make. But here's the solution. Here's the solution to this problem. I'm going to repeat it one more time, then I'm going to give the solution. You have two pieces of string. Each piece burns from one end to the other in 1 hour. Measure 45 minutes. So the first trick is to note, if I want to measure 30 minutes, I take one of these strings and I light both ends, and then zoink. It will be burning twice as quickly, so it will burn in 30 minutes. Cool, cool. Couldn't possibly argue with that. Now, the entire solution is, you have your two pieces of string. Here's the top string. Each finger is an end of the string. And down here at my thumbs, this is the other string. These are the two ends of that. Light 3 ends of the 4 that you have. So the top one will burn up in 30 minutes, and the bottom one will have been burning for 30 minutes. So if you light that 4th end, that remaining strip will burn up in 15 minutes. And all in all, you will have measured 45 minutes. I guarantee you there are people in chat who just went, ooh, ah. They had that deep, thick, rewarding feeling in their head where it's just like, oh, that's cute, that's clever, it's elegant, it makes sense, and there was no bullshit at all. And the reason I love this example so much is that you'll see this bleed into all aspects of life, especially Starcraft. I'm not going to go into the life things, because screw life lessons, we should play video games, right? But in Starcraft, you'll see people have lots of assumptions. They'll have this idea of, like, okay, well, he's going roaches, so I got immortals, because that's what I had to do to deal with them. Or, so I obviously did blank, and a lot of times the assumptions people make are not even stated. It's not even like, so I obviously did blank. For instance, whenever your spawning pool finishes as Zerg, have any of you Zerg players ever elected not to get a queen? Like you had the resources to. You had 300 minerals right when your pool finishes. And you had already started a hatch at your expansion. Have any of you not built a queen? Like 99.99% of Zergs just automatically start that queen when their pool finishes. All their builds, a 10 pool, a 12 pool, a 14 pool after hatchery, those are basically, in their minds, ways of saying, when do I start that queen? But why are you assuming that that's something you have to do? Or a big revelation in Brood War was Best, the famous Protoss player on SK Telecom, developed this unbelievable beastly macro. And people were saying, well, what's your trick? He says that at some point in the game, he completely stops all unit production and devotes all of his resources to building gateways. And the assumption was, if you have built a gateway, then by God, you should be making units out of it. It is newbie to construct that gateway. And of course, there are great examples of this, where you see someone 2-gate make 2 zealots, and then not make any more zealots for a very long time. And someone says, well, why the hell did you make the second gate? Just make 1 gate, make 2 zealots, and you've saved yourself $150. But he demonstrated in the circumstances where he did it that it was better because he didn't rely on that assumption of every unit should always, or every structure should always be building. Of course, as a general rule of thumb, make shit out of those damn buildings. Jesus, don't go home and have terrible macro and think to yourself, oh, day 9 has given me approval to do so. No, very, very, very bad viewer, listener, person. No. But still, it's that sort of thing that is so critical, is to question assumptions and to make sure that you're not doing any of that, because if you don't, then the solution you get, oh, it's so elegant, and when it finally clicks, most rewarding thing in the world. So speaking of one of the most rewarding things in the world, we're going to be watching a game of Gretorp against Fenix, of course the extremely strong player from Starcraft 1. They're going to have a little conversation here. But while we are in the process of ignoring the conversation, I want to let everyone know that Gretorp gives the most incredible massages. Oh my god. I met him at MLG in Raleigh. And he just came up and he's like, hey, what's up, Day? And I was sitting down like, you know, a minute or two later. And he just like put his hand on my back. And he just has these healing thumbs. He's almost better than Davey at the Chinese massage place that's, you know, 20 minutes away from my house. He might even be better. I don't know. Because even when he's giving me those soothing massages, he can be telling me about Terran vs. Terran. So that's just like a good 2-in-1. But Gretorp has this very, very cool opener in Terran vs. Terran that we're going to be talking about. To note why it is cool, I want to briefly note the trends in this matchup. And there's the refinery going down. So brief trends, a lot of emphasis on tanks and Vikings, because the tanks rape ground, and the Vikings let the tanks see farther. Pretty straightforward stuff. Lately, there's been some shifts over to Marauder in the mid-game because they're just so mobile. That's all I'm really going to emphasize too much. But most people, tank Viking openings. Pretty straightforward. But already we're seeing some cool stuff. I'm going to be referencing these assumptions, kind of relating it back to that string riddle I said at the start, or that string brain teaser. Excuse me. I mean, this specific replay isn't the prime example of that, but there are a lot of little things that Gretorp's going to do that I'm gonna say are quite awesome. So the first one we're seeing is a refinery before the barracks. The overwhelming reason that we do this is so that way, right when our barracks finishes, we have 100 gas to start a factory. Fenix looks like, oh, he's also doing the exact same thing. Nifty. Nifty, thrifty. Yeah, they're having a conversation about how many builds do you have? I have 4. He's like, I have 5. Scrub. Something like that. So it looks like they're going to be doing a little powwow. Poor Fenix doesn't live close to Gretorp, because if he did, oh, how good his shoulders could feel. So there's another big sort of autopilot thing that people tend to do, which is to get the orbital command ASAP. Like ASAP, 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 ASAP. And we're going to see just nice timings arise when Gretorp doesn't. He could have elected not to make this Marine. And note that right as this SCV finishes, if this Marine were not built, we'd have 160 minerals and we could warp an orbital command. Instead, he's going to go ahead and make that Marine. Looks like he delayed just a teensy-tiny, weensy-peensy bit. But, you know, I want to go over to Fenix's base, because Fenix is going to be doing something a little bit more typical. Just getting some Marines, doing a fast Hellion push, transitioning to something a little bit more typical. And what we're going to see Gretorp do is he is going to be going for a very, 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 very fast Banshee. An ultra, super, duper, duper, crazy, ultra giga fast Banshee. So, I mean, look how he barely has enough money to do this. It's almost like he got his everything a little bit too quickly. There it is. There's the starport going down right now. This is awfully fast. I'm just going to state that, because obviously we got the factory quick, and then we got the starport quicker, thanks to this very fast refinery. But what's interesting is that we're going to see Gretorp not use this Banshee to do cutesy harassment. He's not going to wander back here and try to pick off SCVs until the Banshee inevitably dies. The Banshee is instead going to be part of this main composition. And we've seen people do things like go for, I'm going to pause this. We've seen people do things like go for Banshee harass, and then bring the Banshees back into their main force for some main pushing. But what I like that Gretorp does is he just uses the Banshee as part of this mix. So looks like he's making a Tech Lab add-on. Now there's already an interesting choice. Does he want to make the add-on at the factory, or does he want to make it at the barracks? Elected for the barracks because he wants to get some Hellions out early. He wants to be a Marine killer. He wants to kill Marines really, really well. Looks like Fenix had basically the same idea in mind. He's moving up here, obviously leading with the SCV, so it takes the damage first. That's very, very just good basic decision making. And there's that ultra fast Banshee. You're noticing things like Gretorp is not actually getting a second geyser yet. He's not getting cloak or anything like that. And we're going to see a little bit of a funky interaction at the start here, because Fenix is being cool. He's going for very fast Thor, as we see popping out right now. But still, this build of Gretorp's is going to be able to deal with it quite well. Again, we like to think of the Banshee as a unit that goes in for harassment, but look at where the rally point is on this. Ooh, rallied way up here to join up with these units. And here comes the command center up at the front. Very, very weird. Very interesting. And just one Banshee. Just one. And then giving that right back to the barracks. And it looks like, are we going to be getting something soon? But look at this. Banshee being used as part of the front. It's an air unit that can reinforce this frontal push. Gretorp's getting the chance to swing up here nicely. There's a Thor. It's time to go home. I do not think that will be a good idea to engage the Thor. Back up. I couldn't remember if he actually lost that Banshee, but some cool micromanagement going on here. And what's interesting about what Gretorp did is that it was actually a little tiny push. We see all sorts of cool little pushes. I think the most typical early push in Terran vs. Terran is the 5 Marine, 1 Hellion push. Very, 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 very basic. You just push with 5 Marines and 1 Hellion and an SCV. And you get it at a time when he doesn't quite have any of those fancy schmancy units. He instead just has some Marines himself. Maybe his tank is getting close to done. Most of the time, not. All that good stuff. Uh-oh, is there a stream issue? Okay, good. Sorry. One of my mods just spammed me with something. And instead he was just spamming me about massages. We can talk about that afterwards. But what's cool about what Gretorp did is it's a nice, cute little push with these Marines and Hellions at a time where, surprisingly, your opponent's going to be a little bit vulnerable. And here's the key. Here's the big key that Gretorp actually specifically described to me was his motivation for starting the build. Not the motivation, but a really cool thing about the build. Most people in this matchup are going for like 5-6 Marines, and then like a tank and a Viking, or a tank and 2 Vikings, and they push with that. But you'll note that Gretorp just rushes to you and tries to kill you off, and what happens is an exchange. Sure, the Vikings shooting the Banshee, but what Gretorp does with his Marines and Hellions is he kills off your Marines. He roasts through those. And most of the time, he can actually take out your tank. Sometimes he won't. But the end result is that you will have a Viking. You probably will kill the Banshee. But you have nothing else. And what does Gretorp have in all this? He has a friggin' gosh damn expansion. Yes. And Gretorp's whole goal on this is to do a cute little push. It's a 1-1-1 style push, but it's very, very cheap. It's very lean. 1 Banshee, some Hellions, some Marines, and then he can get 4 gas geysers very, 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 very quickly. 1 geyser suddenly to 4 geysers. And as we can see, he's beginning to make Marauders. He's now beginning to add on barracks. And what we're seeing from the Fenix standpoint is, wow, Fenix really is in no position to attack. I'm just clearly looking around here. What units would he attack with? 1 Thor and 1 Hellion? No, of course not. It so coincidentally happens to be the case that if his opponent was going for tank Viking in a more standard fashion, he still would not be able to push. Gretorp sends this little army hoping to just cut everybody's numbers down so that no one can do anything, which is exactly what you want to do if you have an expansion. Very, very, very clever little opening. Very clever little opening. So that is the first big thing I wanted to emphasize today, was the cleverness of Gretorp's opening. When he was telling me this in a restaurant, I was just like, oh my god. I was like, oh, nice, 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 nice. This is totally sick. And then I wanted to do a daily upon it. But what's also neat is that Gretorp's late game decision making is also just outstanding. Just excellent, excellent late game decision making. There's a few things that are pretty cool. We're seeing a fast tank coming out. I'm curious if this deviation is purely due to this Thor that he obviously saw with that first early push. or whether it's due to the fact... I'm actually going to go to the Gretorp cam. Or whether it's due to the fact that this is just his standard. What I have been actually seeing Gretorp do as of late is actually get a bunch more barracks, but this is Lost Temple. This friggin' high ground is such a pain in the ass. You really do have to count for that. So yeah, it looks like Gretorp transition into the usual tank Viking business pretty well. Pretty well. I've seen Gretorp transition into big barracks play, obviously by giving this tech lab back to the barracks and then just making a bunch of barracks and looking at his factory and going, not really doing too much with it for a while. But either way, we see some nice versatility of this opening, both in terms of what it can beat and what it can transition into. And Gretorp is the sort of player who likes saving up his scans. It's part of the reason why I'm on the Gretorp cam right now, is I want to see how he ends up spending his scans and where his decision making is coming from. Because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Terran vs. Terran. Lots and lots and lots of craziness. I mean, whether your opponent is getting big amounts of tank Viking and doing that, or whether he's going for these big Marauder pushes, this is pretty typical from Fenix. Putting his tanks in a good position by this Xel'Naga Watchtower while massing up Vikings, that's pretty ordinary. And this is what we also see players starting to bounce a little bit more over to, is Marine Marauder. Good old Marine Marauder, right? Good old second day of beta. Just discovered what a Marauder is, so hell, I'll make 100 of that. Yep, that style is coming back in full swing. Everyone loves it. Now, one thing I do like a little bit more about Gretorp's army here. Did he just do a scan? Didn't mean to rewind here. No, looks like he... No, okay, so here's when he started attacking the destructible rocks, and we see a juke back. We see him pull back here. I'm curious if he did a scan. No, looks like he just felt like... Oh, he saw a scan. Ooh, that's really good. Sees a scan, bounces right back into the main. Nope, doesn't look like that was a scan because a drop was coming. It was just a regular old scan to find out what's going on. But you'll note that a lot of Fenix's army is super immobile. These tanks are basically saying, I am not going anywhere anytime soon. You'll see Gretorp be very good about having this very mobile army that's bouncing around all over the place on a regular basis. Getting a lot of Vikings. Looks like we were adding on more tech labs. There another tech lab here? Yep. Here's the big Marauder mid-game that I really like watching Gretorp for. And another expansion. Yes! Yes! I love this so much. There's a big difference between what people are doing and winning based on what you're seeing people do, and then winning because of what is theoretically optimal. You will see many players get this mix that Gretorp has. You will see many, many players get this mix that Gretorp has. But what do they do with the army? They keep it right there. They keep it here because they say, I want to attack. What if there's something scary out there? I'll wait till I have the best army of all time. And then they move out. So what happens? A player who's really passive and masses up tanks is even with them. We both have 2 bases. You're making Marine Marauder, but not moving out. I'm making a bunch of tanks, but not moving out. Of course, I can't move out because I have siege mode. Shh, we'll come back to that. But of course, when these 2 armies clash, obviously the siege tanks are going to win. But theoretically, the Marine Maraudering player should be expanding lots, and making way more barracks. Because the hell is the siege tank player going to do? And it's so important that you don't, as the siege tanking player, say, well, it's okay because most players don't expand. No, 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 no. You need to be worried about the player who does expand. Because look at Gretorp expanding. Oh, so cool. Fenix, coincidentally, is expanding as well. This is more just because he's a good player and knows how to time this sort of stuff. He knows that with these tanks, he has to be very passive, so he's setting up in passive mode, and with a very small amount of units, he's taking an expansion. Going to the resource counting station. Gretorp's a little bit ahead. He is getting a little bit larger of an army faster, just because he's going for the Marauders, which are a cheap way to get 2 food at a time. But Gretorp, of course, not making the sacrifice. He's getting extra Vikings. He's going for the big Viking mix. And here's the Vikings coming in. Remember, it's very dangerous to land your Vikings. Not bad, but just dangerous. Because right now, this one Banshee, this one single friggin' Banshee is messing up everything for Fenix. Really, if none of these Marauders were coming, and it was just the Vikings and this one Banshee, that would still screw up a lot for Fenix, because he would basically be not allowed to lift up, thanks to all these Vikings in the air, and all the stuff on the ground would be taking damage from the Banshee. So obviously that exchange went very, very nicely. It went pretty far in the direction of Gretorp. Just want to go to the income tab. Where's the harvester count? Whoa! Looks like he lost a butt ton of harvesters. Actually, how many did he lose? Because Gretorp's normally amazing about making those. I actually, yeah, this is, I think, a common error in Starcraft 2. In Starcraft 1, I think this would have been good always. This would have been always correct. But in Starcraft 2, because watch these tanks just target fire these units. Here I go, resuming. Goodbye. See you later. Everything target firing the SCVs. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Sure, Gretorp didn't lose any units, but he lost 20 harvesters. That's pretty gigantic. So honestly, what does this mean? In StarCraft 2, if you ever bring a bunch of workers and rape an attack, you gotta do some sort of counterattack pretty damn fast. You gotta do something due to the fact that you are so far behind on harvesters. It could be stopping a big push. It could be taking another expansion. It could be doing a little bit of damage back yourself and being careful with it. But yeah. Oh, this is... See, look at this. Look at... Oh my god. Did you see how not close that was? Did you see how not close that was? It almost happened too fast. All I did was raise my voice and go, oh my god, oh my god. But here's the issue. Even imagine for a moment if this was 6, 7, 8 tanks instead of 4. Remember what I said. That siege tanking player, the mysterious siege tanking player, should always be worried about a player who's expanding a lot, who has this mobility advantage. What the hell does a mobility advantage mean? It means that if you push out with your tanks and you are not in the perfect position right off the bat, look at that, tank getting one shot off. This tank sieging up. I'm going to try to slow it down. This tank sieging up gets one shot off. These two tanks in the back, this one got no shots off. This one barely got one shot off. Barely. A normal sieged tank that you are engaging will get 2 to 3 shots off. But those got 1 or 0. That is the strength of Marauders. Hitting those tanks when they are not sieged. And picking off those tanks at the front. And as a result, we are having a huge, huge advantage for Gretorp and big vulnerability. So of course Gretorp doing the smart thing. Part of the reason why Vikings are so popular on this map is because obviously of these high ground drops, of this high ground ledge drop, of the island expansions. You just kind of need to make more Vikings on this map, which is not exactly my style, but you know, I must obey what the map dictates. And already we're starting to see more mobility advantage. More mobility advantage. And this is really the second big thing that I wanted to emphasize in this game. One being this opening Gretorp used, and two being how the hell do you use Marauders to beat a big tank Viking-ing player? Obviously, we saw the ability to pick off little pushes here, but then you can do these little drops, and these tanks that were supposed to be defending this place are now having to be pulled back. And honestly, if you have this mix of Vikings and medevacs, you can get in there, kill off half a supply depot, and leave. And even though you didn't do material damage, you did positional damage. Note that this expansion is naked. This ain't nothing going to be able to defend this thing now. If Gretorp did a little bit better scouting here, honestly, if you're doing a push here, scan here. Scan here. Scan there, because then a lot of times you just go, oh, box, click, boom. This is why in late game in TvT, really all this energy should really start getting devoted to scans. Sure, Gretorp had to retreat. Sure, he couldn't really kill off this main force of Fenix, but his goal wasn't to try to really kill anything unit-wise off. And again, I want to go to this income tab. I'm very impressed that Fenix is still ahead on those workers. It's very, very, very impressive. Excuse me. Oh, it's just so boring. Oh, God, gotta drink more coffee. Gotta get myself pumped up. Baby. Yeah, so the killing of this command center didn't happen immediately, but it still happened pretty damn fast after this drop. And it is not that Fenix was dumb and slow and didn't move his tanks forward after this drop. It really is that Fenix gets screwed hard by having to pull this far back into his base. Marauders, very mobile unit, want to use them in those drops. I cannot believe this lead that Gretorp has right now. This is pretty damn astounding. With really no tanks. The tanks have not been used in a sieged-up-like fashion. This is only 3 barracks worth of Marauders. This isn't mass Marauders. This is just the swiftness of the Marauders and their ability to do these surgical strikes. And as a result, if you are against a big maraudering player, you should begin incorporating a few more marines into your force. A few more marines. Which, of course, makes the tanks a little bit stronger. And if you start thinking too much in terms of unit compositions, you'll go insane. You'll drive yourself... What was the word I heard yesterday? It was like, you'll drive yourself dinglebats? It was, someone said something was like serious. I was like, what's dinglebats? And they're like, you know, like crazy. I'm like, I do not know what dinglebats means. I'm pretty sure I'm making that up. Dinglebats does sound pretty ridiculous. But you know what? You'll go dinglebats if you think about these unit composition things. Because here, let's just show how futile it is. Well, if I'm making a lot of marauders, then he should start making a lot of marines and marauders in his force. And if he's making a lot of marines, then I need to start getting some tanks. But if he's getting tanks, or if I'm getting tanks, then he needs to start getting some marauders himself to deal with my tanks, because I won't have that many. So that means I got to start getting marines. And then what happens is you end up with these stupid situations where you just have one of everything. It's like you have a barracks with a reactor, a barracks with a tech lab, a factory with a tech lab, a factory with a reactor. You have some starports with reactors. You have another starport with a tech lab because you want some banshees in there. And you're like, okay, cool, I'm set. And then you just lose because you only have 2 of each unit. You don't really have much of anything. What's cool about just Marauder as an exercise is we are seeing that, yeah, it can pick off things, it can do these drops. It's quite a fancy unit. It's quite effective. So these tanks, even though these tanks will be doing damn good against these Marauders, it's still very, very, very difficult for them to... for Fenix to stay ahead in this game because of all this positional abuse that Gretorp's doing. Just all this mobility abuse. And oh yeah, and what's he shooting down? Shooting down reactors. Now, it might look super sophisticated that he's killing off a reactor. Oh yes, so he can stay ahead in Viking count. Oh yes, very intellectual. But in a simple sense, tech labs and reactors have the lowest health of anything, so they are guaranteed. They're guaranteed damage. You start shooting a starport, you'll bring it down to half life, and then all his units will arrive. And you'll have to head home. Head home. Ooh, I have to head home. I'm not sure why I said it like that, but it's okay. I'm feeling pretty dinglebats today. So Gretorp doing the usual thing, adding on some barracks. I'm not crazy about this placement, but you know, whatever floats your boat. That's fine at this stage in the game. How these upgrades coming? Yes, Gretorp's always quite good about upgrades. This expansion, I think, was actually a touch late. I said that. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. Yeah, probably could have been a little bit earlier. This is a lot of medevacs, though. And I'm still curious as to how this game is going to continue past this point. Because I actually know that it doesn't end here. I haven't seen the whole replay, but I'm quite curious. I mean, I think the big thing is that Fenix has the impenetrable death ball. I mean, ooh, Gretorp. In this situation, this is where a lot of players are going to start faltering. So I'm seeing Gretorp just make a lot of Marauders, and okay, yeah, there's a huge amount of tanks here. Now, all the stuff that you were doing before with medevacs, drops, and all these Reapers, I mean, look, this stuff is still working. And there's no reason not to do it huge. There's no reason not to do a 7 medevac drop worth of Marauders. There's nothing bad about that. What's problematic is when you get to this stage and someone who is the red Terran will say, alright, cool, I did the damage, I did it. And they will start trying to break this. This is hard to break. I mean, even look at me just double-clicking and look at all the snow everywhere. Yep, all this area, you shouldn't really be engaging. But still, this thing's big weakness is immobility. I think the big problem that lots of people have is when they hit late game, all the mid-game logic sort of goes out the window and they just go into macro mode. They stop thinking completely. Or I should say stop using builds that are driven by thinking. They do everything driven by clicking. I'm noticing Gretorp cooling off a little bit here. Yeah, and look, there's the big scan here. These turrets could be taken out. These turrets could actually just be suicided into. With, you know, a bunch of Vikings and medevacs with these guys in it. Yeah, come on, keep going, keep loading them up. Yes, good. Now, of course, there are late game transitions that you can do. In this matchup, great transition. Start getting a butt ton of Vikings. Get 1-1. Alright, well, looks like getting pretty close to it. Get one starport that has a tech lab and start getting battle cruisers and start double upgrading your air. Really, there's not that good ground to air for Terran. So one battle cruiser just does worlds of hurt if you have more Vikings. Very easy transition. If you are kind of committed to doing your Marauder stuff, then you need to be doing a lot of drops, exactly the way that Gretorp is doing. Note that he is maxed right now, and should really start doing some insane things with his money, spamming command centers. Oh, yes, there's the starport spam. Brilliant. Oh, yes. Oh, so nifty. Nifty-tastic. Oh, this is just so good. So, okay, so there's a third thing that I didn't know that this was going to be part of the daily, but just to review the first two. First one, very cool little push that Gretorp did. You can do a lot of things, or you can stop a lot of things, and you can transition and do a lot of things. That's what I call a good damn opening. And the second thing, in the middle, was just look at how great Marauders can be. Sure, tanks are beastly units, but we can literally avoid them and just poke at all these weak spots and really peel apart the defense, isolate some tanks, also strengthen Marauders. You're kind of unpushable in those mid-game stages. But the third big thing that I'm sort of seeing here is how to do this late-game transition. So Gretorp is just going hog wild. He's just adding on starports. He's adding on a ton of armories. He's started to really ramp up the Viking productions. This is a great thing to do when you are max. Just suddenly get like 8 starports, get almost all reactors, start pumping out Vikings, and just get a splash of battle cruisers. Just 3 battle cruisers. Sometimes even 1 battle cruiser is enough to strike fear into the heart of your opponent. I am concerned about how not crazy Gretorp has been with his expanding. He should be absolutely insane with his expanding once he is maxed. Now, this is dangerous. This is not something you should do when you are maxed, which is suicide big amounts of units. Drops, still important. Using these tanks to kill off these turrets so you can do drops, great, that's consistent. Too often, you'll see a player get maxed and then just run the medevacs here, attack the tanks, move in with everything I have from the bottom, let's try to kill off the tanks. That's bad. That's very, very, very weak. Properly playing when you are maxed is an essential skill. Yeah, and look at Gretorp doing the usual sort of thought process. I'm going to be freaking them out in 2 locations at once, and I'm going to try to kill off the planetary fortress. That's good. I think we can all clearly see that this game is in the advantage of Gretorp. But let me tell you something. Tanks screw up this matchup. They screw it up in a good way. Okay, well, let me... What tanks do is tanks make the game go longer. Tanks are hard to penetrate. They're hard to get into 15 tanks. They're very, very, very hard to kill. Have I emphasized yet that tanks are friggin' hard to kill, right? They are a tough unit to brank. So, a lot of Terran players, the biggest thing they struggle with in TvT is how to win when they have a lead. How to win when they have a lead. Look at all these guys making tons of starports. Yeah, we have so many Vikings being made. Where's the 1 starport with the Tech Lab add-on for the battle cruisers? That's what I would really like to see. That's what I would very, very, very much so like to see. Vikings will allow you to control the air, but now that you're getting all these Vikings Gretorp, you need to do something with that air control, such as 1 battle cruiser. There's actually this great game between Pain User and Fly Rice, I believe, where Pain User just had like 80 Vikings and 1 battle cruiser, and the battle cruiser had like 52 kills and all of them were tanks. I mean, like, there was very little that Fly Rice could do about that 1 single battle cruiser. So Gretorp is continuing to push in here. This I'm not wild about. We're starting to try to do fancy stuff with an army that's kind of immobile. So we have like a lot of tanks. And see the tanks getting a little isolated. Oh yeah, we gotta keep those in 1 location. We're slowly making our way up here. This is a nice little chew through. Yeah, we're slowly eating into his base. I just really want to see a battlecruiser, you guys. I really want to see a battlecruiser. There's a ship weapons battlecruiser. Daily. Oh, I'm not going to talk about the time of the daily. Uh-oh, here's the big counterattack happening right now. So, now I just want to say, pretend for a moment that Fenix, actually just ignore the fact that Fenix has a lot of tanks. Just think of this as an army in the most general sense. Could be anything. This is the problem with tanks. See Gretorp? See all these tanks? See all these tanks pushing in here? This is scary. This is undeniably scary. But also, this is undeniably gonna have to friggin' stay here for a very long time. So, an army, again, doesn't matter what Fenix has. These could be Marauders, these could be Marines, these could be Zealots, these could be Stalkers, these could be Hydralisks. An army can easily counterattack. Look at how easy this counterattack is. Whoa, and look at this. These tanks by Fenix didn't even have to leapfrog. They got to just walk up and say, hooray! Thank you very much for this advantage. And here, we're seeing the classic problem in this matchup. Players getting a big advantage and leaving little gaps in their defenses. Of course, Gretorp is just continuing to hammer away. Again, Gretorp is still just a huge, huge advantage. Why is this island not taken? I mean, at the very least, there should be an orbital command landed there. Excuse me. Yes, you should really, really, truly go just bonkers in later stages of the game. Sometimes I feel like players are getting a little bit too many Vikings in general. And oh yes, here's the tech lab. Is there a fusion core? Banshees are also another good expenditure of that air control, just for like a fast, quick, and dirty army. Very vulnerable to Thors, but as we can see, I mean, the factories are sort of disappearing quickly. Here's a cool little exchange going on. And I think most people would look at this game and say, yeah, this really shouldn't be going on this long. Gretorp has been so many light years ahead for so long, and, you know, obviously Fenix is playing from behind, going to the income count. Looks like the workers have only just now gotten even, thanks to a lot of worker kills over here. Fenix doing the ha-ha-ha. Oh, and there's the regame. So, yeah, there, he's finally leaving the game. Now, so that game was awesome for a number of reasons, but I want to talk about, like, the last, I would say, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. In the general theory of gameplay, why does the better player want the game to always go on longer? Because the longer a game goes on, the more decisions there are to make, so the more chances there are for the weaker player to screw up and make the wrong choice, and the more chances there are for the good player to make the right choice. Yeah. But now let's come back into reality land, get away from theory land. In any situation you are in, there's always chances to screw up and make mistakes. I mean, like, you'll even see Flash, who's like the best player in the world, sometimes just make some dumb mistakes. So, when you are playing a game where you have a lead, that is where the dumbest of dumb mistakes occur. In that game, Gretorp's kind of, oh my god, I just lost 3 bases because I was overcommitting to an attack on the left and had nothing to deal with a counterattack. Oh, whoops, surprise. Obviously less than optimal. But what's very impressive about Gretorp is that in that last 10-15 minutes, Gretorp just kept his advantage and wasn't slipping behind at all. Most of the time when players win, I would probably let's put an actual figure out there. Let me actually try to think. In my experience of my own games, I'd probably say 85-90% of my games fall into this category of, and actually this should be the case for you too. Game is even, game is even, game is even, game is even. Whomp! I have a huge advantage. UGG. Period. Right? Protoss versus Protoss. We're building up armies. We're building up armies. We're building up armies. Huge battle. I wind up with 2 Colossus and 10 Zealots left over. You have nothing. I push your expansion. It starts dying. You leave the game. Simple. Simple, straightforward, but again, even. Or sometimes you see this sort of thing. But what you don't actually experience a lot is this. Where, hi, I'm up here. No one's leaving the game anytime soon, but I clearly have a lead. How do I do that? And surprisingly, players botch a lot when they have the lead. Because again, the only time they're ever up here is right after we've traded armies. I'm at a huge lead, and I'm about to kill you. People have only had this much of an advantage when they are seconds away from victory. So it's so important not to just freak out and throw the game away. So we're going to go ahead and take some questions here. It looks like there's been a server split. But, you know, whatever. So, once questions pop up, yeah. So, you know, coming back to the earlier things, I really liked the, God, I love that opening by Gretorp. It's very clever. I'm still refining my Thor opening. You saw me do that yesterday if you were here live. If not, I have to fix that because the Ustream servers were not really letting me connect properly. So it's like in 15 segments, and I just haven't had time to fix it. So I'm going to take this question by Just Too Good For You, says... So you seem to imply that Terran tanks make the game take longer. Do you feel like with the tank nerf in 1.1, will that have a drastic effect on Terran play, or will most matches still become tank Viking? I really don't think it'll have that drastic of an effect on TvT. Because most of the units you're making that tanks will shoot at are armored. Marauders, other tanks, Thors, Vikings that are landed. The one things you really won't see a lot of... Or the other units are Hellions and Marines are still going to get raped by tanks, like, violently. So, I mean, because Marines cluster so much, and still, 2 tank shots, goodbye Marines. So, I think it will have an effect on the Terran versus Zerg matchup. Because 2 tank shots for Zerglings is pretty big. Because in Terran vs. Terran, you get masses of tanks. In Terran vs. Zerg, you kind of get some tanks. You get like 4 or 5. So 2 tank shots instead of 1 is going to be very significant. If Zerg has a +1 upgrade. I think against Protoss, it's going to be pretty big because of Zealots. Zealots just got eaten alive by tanks. So I kind of like the idea that they will not be eaten alive. So let's see. Okay, so Firearms says, Dear Day 9, I often find it difficult in the late game deciding strategy. I default to the likes of battle cruisers or carriers and void rays. How do I apply my knowledge strategy in the early game to the late game? So let's ignore the early game for a little bit. And in fact, this is the way I advise most people to think about their gameplay. Start by thinking what you want to have done in the mid game first, and then plan out everything you want for the late game. And then the last step is to make an initial build order. So let's do that with this game. So what I want in the mid game is Terran. Okay, well I want a decent amount of Vikings and Medivacs and a lot of Marauders. Very few tanks. And I want 3 bases up. My main, my natural, and my gold expansion. That's the look I want. So in the later stages of the game, I obviously want to be taking more expansions. I can conceive of doing things like continuing to mass Marauder till the day I die, because he's so, because it's the correct thing to do, because he's weak, he has a lot of points that I can break with that, or he's like still going like only tank, and I can just easily exploit that because it's really immobile. Or if he's going like only Viking and I just get like tons of Marauders. Yeah. So let's see. This sounds stupid, but I'm still going to say it and then do an example. The more aggressive your opponent is being, the less room you have to really shift what you're doing, and the more you have to make defensive units. So for instance, if he's going big Marine Marauder and you're going big Marine Marauder, if one of you suddenly stops doing that, and like, you know, let's say I'm going Marine Marauder, you're going Marine Marauder, both have huge armies, and I think, dude, I'm going to get a battle cruiser, and I make 3 starports and start trying to get BCs. If you scan and see that, you attack, I lose all my shit, and you have 50 food worth of Marine Marauder that are just going to terrorize me right before these 3 battle cruisers pop up. That's what you don't want to be in. What would help me, though, is if I made some tanks to play a little bit more defensively and to sort of situate myself. If for some reason your opponent is trying to situate himself and has situated himself a little bit too nicely, that's when you start moving around and exploiting a lot of different attack locations. You want to be doing a lot of really nice hitting this, hitting that, hitting this, hitting that. In the late game, it's a lot about correct mini pushes or mini harassments in various locations. The mid game is more about the one big attack. You know, like, here is everything. Woof. Attack, you know. So later stages think a lot about that sort of just general movement and flow. And also, that's the reason that the late game is really hard is that's when the big abstract concepts are most important, like map control, air control, ground control. If I have air control, if I have a lot of Vikings, then I can sort of go battle cruisers. And you can't, because my Vikings will kill your Vikings, and my battle cruisers are completely defended. Seems good. If, like total ground control, if you have too many Vikings and I have too many Marauders, I suddenly can take any expansion I want on the map, and there's really not that much that you can do about it. It's a little tough, so I hope that rambling at least addressed some things. All right, it's 8 p.m. We started a little bit late, so I'm going to take a few more questions. Oh, here's a good specific one from Truglin. It says, Day 9, I feel the prevalence of Vikings for Gretorp was incredibly wasted. If he had made like 4 banshees, he could have easily eliminated the tanks sitting in the middle of the game. Why didn't he do this? Oh, that is kind of interesting. So let me first say that I don't, like, in that game specifically, I don't feel like the Vikings were that much of a waste. I think that that was a very cool way to spend his money because if for 1 second you're behind on Vikings, suddenly the number of tanks that you are up against just crushes you. It completely and totally cripples you. Oh, I just had another thought. Okay, so let me finish that first one. So a lot of times you'll see people have an excess of Vikings. You'll be like, but those Vikings aren't really actively doing anything. And the answer is that they are passively preventing something that is really, really, really scary. For instance, like if you've ever seen a Protoss versus Protoss, and a player makes like a few cannons in his main. This is in Brood War. Makes a few cannons in his main. You might say something like, those cannons were never used. It seemed like he didn't do much. If he didn't make those cannons, he could have made an extra gateway. Yeah, he could have in that specific context, but what happens when the player tries to DT drop? What happens in this game with Gretorp when the player really starts trying to make a lot of Vikings and battle for air control? Gretorp already has those Vikings. And if Gretorp loses air control, again, tanks on the high ground, very, very scary, very, very frowny. But also, I think the reason why Banshees didn't start popping out is because a Thor made itself seen very early on, and it's pretty damn easy to just slam out 2 Thors. And suddenly Banshees are these horrible units. And most good players, Fenix didn't do it in this game, I think understandably, because he had a just good read on his opponent, but most good players will be building those turrets, and will be able to buy that sort of time. So, I'm going to, Last question by Neo Bowman. Says, Dear Day 9, in Brood War, Terran vs. Terran players compensated for the slowness of Tank Goliath by using dropships. What do you think of using Medevac Tank Thor to do something similar in Starcraft 2? That is a tough one because, okay, actually this is a pretty clean answer. So let me give the clean answer first, and let me then explain why I'm just sitting here going, So the clean-cut answer is that Vikings are such an important unit, and because players will be getting a lot of Vikings to battle for air control, if you're trying to float around with a bunch of tanks and Thors and a bunch of medevacs, and he has like 8 Vikings, you're going to lose like your whole army before it gets unloaded. So that's bad. The reason I'm kind of like, is because if you can get those medevacs to land properly and unload everything, wow, it's good. Oh, you're in unbelievable shape and you can eat an entire main. But the problem really is those Vikings. And sure, you could say, well, why don't I just go Viking medevac tank Thor? And then you're basically also saying, why don't I have infinite gas? And the answer is because you're not allowed to in this game. So that's that explanation. Again, I'm a little bit because I mean there might be a way to get it to work. I don't know. It seems a little bit cleaner to go like Viking medevac Marauder because the Marauders are so cheap on gas. But if you're going Viking medevac gas heavy units, you don't really have the gas. So that's that. That's going to wrap that up, that daily. This one's going to be pretty quick to upload. The other daily 170. It's going to be impossible to get that bad boy functioning, but I will try my hardest. Signing out. There will be a daily on Sunday. I swear to God I'm going to have a full week of dailies, and it's going to be flawless. I'm tired of getting it interrupted. Well, these stupid events like ESL and MLG. Ugh, Green Forest Land Cafe. Actually, those were all awesome. But still, I want to do a full week of dailies. Blaju. So it's 8:05 p.m. I am, as you can see, noticeably sweaty because it's 1,000,000 degrees in my house. Time to unsweatify. See ya.